right, this series is to explore the most important things that nobody told me, that I've wondered for most of my life. And rather than listen to the hum of the Bangkok tugs and other interesting activity on the Chao Phraya River, we're going to listen to a little bit of ambient background by my friend Yasis, Heavenly Dreamscapes, and it's just a nice background. Being an adult, one of the things that I wondered as I became 20, 30, 35, 40 years old was I an adult? Because I didn't feel any different, and I didn't know what an adult was supposed to feel like. And it seemed as if the culture, as if people had made a fair amount of deal, a bit of a fuss around being an adult, and I couldn't tell if I was one. Now, this brings me to a really important distinction. So for much, if not most of my life, if somebody had said, "Are you an adult?" not chronologically, I mean legally, anyone who's whatever age, sometimes a tribe will say you're an adult at 15 or 18 or 21, 25. There's a legal age at which suddenly you're classified as an adult. But that has very little to do with whether or not one behaves or feels like an adult or even knows what it is. So I want to just begin by highlighting a few things. Having a car does not make you an adult. Having a credit card does not make you an adult. Buying a house does not make you an adult. Having a child does not make you an adult. And so there's an important psychological threshold that we have made largely meaningless in our culture by not giving any honor or ritual that would lead to adulthood. Getting a job does not make one adult. And so having had a taste, like I would say that the first time I knew what an adult was, right? Because here's the first challenge, like you have to experience something different to be able to make a distinction. Otherwise, it's just a word. And so, are you an adult? And there's so many different ways to come at this topic. I think a good one to begin with is to understand that there are surprisingly few adults. I would say at a bare minimum, 90% of people are not adults, or certainly not high quality adults, regardless of their chronological age. I think it's perfectly, it happens all the time that people die without ever really experiencing adulthood. And part of the reason is when you internalize what's around you in your culture, if you haven't met any adults, if you haven't experienced an adult, if your parents, for example, are regressed psychological children, a narcissist, for example, is incapable of being an adult. If so many of the people around you are regressed children or sociopathic in various ways, there's no model oh, that's an adult. I know what an adult is. And I've been able to be in enough relationship with an adult to be able to know when I'm moving in that direction, right? And so this is one of the bigger crises in our time. And I would say that despite reading Robert Bly and listening to him at probably age 14, 15, and I would say that, in various ways, at certain times, Robert Bly would meet the standard of being an adult. That's, as a little meta conversation, an important thing to be aware of. That an adult does not come with a body of a certain age. It comes with a series of characteristics. And those series of characteristics come and go. It's an embodied set of qualities that lead to a certain type of action. And it comes and goes. As I'm making this video at age 50, I would say that I am an adult at most 20% of the time. That's one thing to be aware of, right? So if you were to interact with me, it would be worth noting, am I being an adult at that time? And in what way? Right? So it's not black or white. And this topic is holographic, right? I kind of experience it or visualize it as a sphere. And so what I'm doing is putting together words, patterns of energy that in some way, by the time that I'm done talking, suggest some of the shape of that sphere, some of the core patterns of that sphere. And it's the synergy of all these little bits of energy, all these patterns, these symbolic patterns called words and ideas that together form something that is a very useful pattern to understand, which is adulthood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to go through kind of, you can imagine them as a series of lines that each go around this nameless sphere, right? Because the deepest energies can never be captured in words. They can simply be referenced in words. And so we're going to just create line after line after line that goes around this sphere. And as you hold all of these different patterns together simultaneously, knowing that the lines, like the lines that go around a balloon, are not the balloon. The space that is inside the balloon is not the balloon, right? The balloon is simply the pattern that offers a container for a type of experience, for a type of consciousness that when we hold that pattern in consciousness, we can have that experience, right? And so, whether that's enlightening or gibberish, right? It partly depends on the skill with which we weave a pattern of words, a pattern of ideas, and the skill with which we open to and receive that pattern of ideas. And all of that, in some way, is involved in being an adult. So it's somewhat random which thread we work on first, but one of the useful threads is the maturation process, which we could say is sympathy, antipathy, synthesis. Right? So sympathy means or references the childlike innocence of complete and utter openness. Right? I'm a Republican because Dad's a Republican. I'm a vegetarian because Mom's a vegetarian. I'm an American because that's what I am. It's just I speak English because that's what everyone around me does. Right? And so the childlike state of sympathy is an unfiltered download or openness to everything that is. Right? Mom beats the shit out of me. It must be the way things are done. Mom says that's love. Love equals being beaten, right? That's just the way it is. And it's very important to understand that in this stage of development, of childlike innocence, of sympathy, of receptivity, that we are at the effect, the affect of everything around us. Right? Whatever is the way people talk, there have been 10,000 languages. We learn the one that's going on around us, not the best one, not the worst one. Whatever's being done, whatever's going on around us, we internalize it. And this is the first stage in development. Now, the next stage is adolescence, antipathy, rebellion. This is when we wake up to the fact that what we've downloaded, what we've internalized, is corrupt, painful, insane, incredibly stupid, and it's mind-numbingly painful, right? To be an adolescent in the healthy stage of antipathy is to be able to look objectively at what it is that we've become, at what the cult of parenting, of our culture is. And it sucks, right? It doesn't feel good. It's not efficient. It doesn't make sense. It's hypocritical. It's painfully stupid. And so naturally, we swing to the other side of the continuum. A healthy adolescent moves from, well, of course we beat Jews and we treat women as inferior because that's what we do, right? A child takes everything that's being done around it and internalizes it without any filters, which is why it is completely wrong to hold a child below the age of 6, certainly, and at whatever point reason starts to come in. It's completely wrong to hold a child accountable for anything that it thinks, that it feels, that it does, that it copies, that it believes. Because it is entirely the byproduct of the environment. And in this sense, we can say that this is the stage of victimhood, right? That you have the stage of victimhood, and then you have the stage of being the oppressor or the perpetrator, right? And then you transcend that loop. The child is a victim. Everything that is wrong, whether it's being hit, whether it's being laughed at, whether it's being told that you're stupid, everything that's painful is not the fault of the child, number one. And paradoxically, every child blames themselves for every craziness, for every shame, for every pain that is done to them. And that they do, right? The child blames themselves completely and is a complete victim of the surrounding. Now, the adolescent moves into martyrhood, right? The adolescent starts to understand that, it's their stupid parents, it's their incompetent teachers, it's the idiotic neighbors. The whole world is complete and utter nuts. And this is a vital step to go through in the maturation process. We're going from sympathy to antipathy. So the adolescent's job is to wake up and critically analyze every single thing that is wrong with the world. And since the sympathy was complete and extreme, the antipathy, to balance it out, the rejection, is also similarly, in a healthy adolescent, extreme. My parents are fucked up. My school, don't get me started on my school. My government is full of shit, right? My siblings, it's all utterly terrible, and it's all the burden of the adolescent, right? I've got to listen to my dumb father talk about this. So the adolescent is a martyr, misunderstood, burdened with things it can't solve. It can't. Self-important, self-centered, right? It's an important medicine to go from the complete service of the family, right? The child becomes what the family system needs and demands to feel better, and the child can sense it and just does it, right? If the family needs a black sheep to blame, the child becomes a black sheep with no filters. Like, how can I help? Okay, I'll be a black sheep. And you need someone to blame and punish for being incompetent as parents? Fine, I'll do it. So this is sympathy, antipathy. Now, cynical rejection of the entire world in the adolescent phase of antipathy is not maturity. It's not adulthood. It's where many people spend the rest of their lives if they don't become children again. But it's not adulthood because you can't function in that posture. Money's corrupt, the jobs are evil, the bosses are bad, whatever. You have no relationship with anything other than maybe sullen, resentful participation in something. This is the adolescent stage. Now, the job of the child is to accept everything, the best and the worst of what is and what was. It's all encapsulated in the cult, in the pattern that is downloaded to the child. That's the child's job, is to download the program, such as it is. The adolescent's job is to criticize, to critique, to reject and highlight everything terrible about the program, right? And to know what it is. And now the adolescent is in the perfect place to never do anything. Why get a job in the corrupt industrialization, the pollution of the planet, the domination of the poor, the slave children in Africa, why participate in that, right? Why get into politics when you know that anyone who tells the truth is immediately voted out? And should you earn any money? Probably not. if you want to be pure, go off in the rainforest and plant trees for free, right? And so at the end of a healthy adolescence, you realize your parents shouldn't have had you. You certainly shouldn't have children. Your whole family system is built on slavery. This, that, they've oppressed, they've invaded. The whole thing is fucked basically. And that's the place that every healthy adolescent gets to. They should know why it's fucked, that it is fucked, that nothing can be done about it, that it's all fucked, there's nothing good about it at all in the entire world today. It's all polluted. You fly to an environmental conference, what are you thinking? There's jet fuel. You drive to a talk on poetry and you've killed trees and so it's completely and totally fucked. And whether you sulk, so that's one posture, whether you sulk, whether you dissociate, whether you attempt to kill yourself and commit suicide, because you don't want to be a part of all that. Or whether you go on a campaign to tell everyone in no uncertain terms how exactly they're wrong. This is all adolescent territory. You're wrong, you're wrong. So you can spend a lifetime sulking, sabotaging, self-sabotaging, self-destructing, criticizing the entire planet, beginning with your parents. And this is adolescence. In this cycle of sympathy, antipathy, synthesis, the emergence of the adult, first of all, it has perspective, right? So that's necessary. Secondly, what the adult grasps that the adolescent does not grasp is that everything is on a continuum. The adolescent may have fantasies of rainforest tree houses or beautiful women who adore him finally, or handsome men that show up with the decency that I deserve to take me off to my castle. Whatever the fantasy is, it's iterative and it's on a grayscale, meaning that even if you had lovely white horses, beautiful maidens that actually appreciated you and all of this, that it wouldn't be good enough, right? The horse wasn't pure enough. It was, do we have to smell this horse shit, right? The castle hasn't been renovated, it's a stage, meaning the purpose of adolescence in its healthiest sense is to bring to awareness what's wrong, the fact that everything is imperfect. It always has been, it always will be, but it's to bring the specific imperfections of the day to awareness so that as you become an adult, you can make them better. Not perfect, better, right? So in healthy, in this, let's just go through this cycle as in a little fragmented metaphor. As a child, you go to your first hotel, and isn't it wonderful? They have rooms, people clean the hotel, you pay these bits of paper, it's a hotel, it's wonderful, right? So the child absorbs the hotel experience, right? Then you grow up, you have more hotel experiences, you learn that every hotel is not equal, you find the flaws in the hotel. They're supposed to have good service. I rang the phone, it took them 20 minutes, and then I had to call them again. That's not good service, right? So your job as an adolescent is to criticize the hotel, right? That the wallpaper wasn't your favorite color, dumb designers. The hotel. These sheets don't feel very good. They should have given me better sheets for the money, right? So you become a critic, right? So first you criticize the hotel. Now the adult move is then as you move into hotel management, right? You go to the hotel, you're a child. You criticize the hotel, you're an adolescent. The pivot towards adulthood is first into deeper engagement. The adult always engages more with the world. The adolescent sulks and separates. The adult engages with the world. And so what does the adult do? Like, what's the adult path of running a hotel? First of all, the adult makes a list of all of its own inner adolescence complaints. I hated the sheets. When I run a hotel, I want to have better sheets. Until you learn that customers are cheap, they shop based on price. If you raise the prices, they just go to the other hotel. But now you don't have any money to pay for the sheets, right? And so you have to learn these things by going deeper into the reality. And the adult's job is to improve. The adult's job is to make sure that you've got a better version of a hotel than the one that you criticized. Now, this is also where we honor the people in the arena more than we honor the critic, right? There's that saying, but it's true that somebody who criticizes a hotel and then sets out to build a better one and then goes through all of the challenges that life brings to them as they create a better hotel, comes out the other side, and we honor them in a certain respect, particularly if they succeed, right? Many hotels go out of business. They never get built, so they couldn't raise the money, etc. And so we honor those adults who don't just criticize the competition, don't just criticize what's going on, but who make it their path to make the world a better place in some way. And this is an important distinction to say, in some way, right? Because the adolescent is in extreme. If it's not perfect, I don't want it. Not the perfect man for me. Oh, when is the perfect man going to come along and see what a great person I am without developing myself, without getting off my ass, without leaving the... Oh, when? Right? When is the... The adolescent is an extremist. If it's not perfect, I'm having none of it. I'm sulking. I'm not doing that. I'm not talking with you. You don't treat me with enough respect. I'm going to sulk. Or I'm just having nothing to do with it, right? I'm busy playing video games because that job isn't good enough for me. That job isn't good enough for me. Nobody gave me the money to build my perfect hotel the first time, or let me build my wonderful movie. So it's not good enough, right? So the adult understands that life from the beginning of the Big Bang until now and for the rest of time is always getting better slowly in bits and pieces, right? So you might spend 10 years of your life building a new hotel, and you might make the check-in process 20% faster with the same shitty credit cards, with the same fees that you didn't like in the first hotel, right? And you might make the wallpaper a better color, and you might also discover that wallpaper needs more maintenance than the one that you criticize, and you might see it from both sides. Maybe I'm not going to spend so much money on wallpaper next time. And so the adult's job is synthesis. And what synthesis is taking the best of what is and the best of what was and carrying it forward. You know, English is not the best language, but I'm sticking with it. The US dollar, the Thai baht, not the best currency, debased by the government, inflation, but I'm gonna keep using it. I'm gonna keep using the local currency. I'm gonna keep accepting those rip-off credit cards because the world isn't perfect. But I am gonna shave 5 minutes off of the check-in time. And I am going to provide a nicer lighting design. And I am going to have staff that listen to this detail that always bothered me so much. And so we reject the worst of what was, and we keep the best of what was. Right? It's not perfect, but we aim to make it better than it was before, to engage with the world, to listen to the adolescent voices in the culture and in ourselves that criticize everything for good reasons, and to decide what we can do. For example, a healthy adult approach might be to say, my parents were shitty parents in a shitty culture with shitty jobs and who had a shitty relationship with one another. Okay? So my goal is to have a 30% less shitty marriage, right? So my parents had no skill. I'm going to learn this one skill that my parents didn't have that could improve my relationship 10%. I'm going to do this one thing that my parents never did, actually listen for an hour a day or something like that. You know, I'm going to pick this one thing in this whole shitty environment, and I'm going to do that one thing, and it's going to make things 10% better, 20% better. In other words, an adult understands that it never has been and that it never will be perfect. That what matters is that each cycle, each evolution, each iteration of the pattern is better than it was before. And an investor, like if you say, I'm going to give you $1 million and I want you to give me back $1,300,000. Right? I want a 30% return. That's not easy to do. A 30% return, certainly annually, right? But over a 10-year period, could I get a 30% return? You know, maybe, 3%, right? If I can be a 30% better parent than my parents, if I can have a 30% better marriage than my parents' marriage, not randomly, not because I'm entitled to it, but because I carefully select the best of what was and what is, and I work with it. It's not perfect, I work with it. And I reject the worst of what is and the worst of what was. Right? My mother punished my father for providing everything for her. Okay? In my marriage, my wife punishes me, but I don't provide everything for her. Right? I make her go out and earn her own money. She still punishes me, but I'm not being punished for being generous. Now I'm being punished for not treating her like a baby, right? Everyone has a baby inside them, and they want everyone else to take care of them perfectly. And, my father tried to do that and still got punished. And I don't try to do it and I get punished. And it's 50% better, right? It would be even more wonderful to be celebrated for not babying me. Thank you for not babying me so I could grow up, right? But it may take 200 years for our culture to produce that kind of woman, right? The woman isn't perfect now, wasn't perfect yesterday, isn't going to be perfect in 200 years. But to get to the point where we could actually be celebrated for being ourselves rather than punished for trying to please someone could take 200 years of several people, several generations making things a little bit better. And so the benchmark can be, this is where I come from, this is what my culture does. My culture has a rat race of miserable and depressed people. They run around madly, right? They're not happy, and they're depressed. So maybe I could strive to run around madly and not be depressed and be 50% happy, right? That'd be, 75% better than average. And so I'm going to take the baseline and see what I can do differently to make my life better than it could be, better than the default mode, which is the average, what everyone else is doing. Right? So there's a lot of people spending money on things that make them miserable. I'm going to not spend money on things that make me miserable. That could be my one iteration. Right? My parents spent a lot of money buying houses so they could worry about who's taking care of that house, the weeds are growing in that house, we have to find the staff, get a new gardener. So my parents spent a lot of money to be miserable. And my greatest iteration could be, I'm not going to spend any money on things that make me miserable. If it makes me miserable, just cut it out. Right? So, or maybe I keep spending money on things that make me miserable. That's, because I didn't get around to editing that bit of code. But I also spend some money on things that make me happy. Right? So that's how you iterate. Not perfectly. But if you aim that your life is 30% better than the life that was given to you, right? You learned that you were worthless, and you turn your life into a point where only half of you thinks that you're worthless. That's progress. That's adulthood, right? We're taking the code that is, and we're using our skill, our ability, our time to make it better. So that's the first thread that I'm going to wrap around this energy, around this feeling of adulthood. That we move from the sympathy and unconditional download and acceptance of all that is of the child. And some of us are still there. We're still waiting, right? If I'm a good enough person, someone's going to take care of me, right? But then the next step is to move into adolescence, a very risky thing. It brings up shame, it brings up guilt, brings up fear, shame. Maybe we're not lovable if we see the flaws in our parents, in our government, in our partners. It's terrifying. Maybe they won't like us because now, before we pretended that everything they did was perfect, but now we say, hey, you're full of shit. You keep talking about discipline and you're fat and eat sugar every day. And you keep telling me to read meditation books. You're on your phone when you say you're meditating. You're not the ideal teacher or whatever. You just know how to talk and you don't pay any attention, right? So that could end a relationship right there, right? You're supposed to look at me as an innocent child, if you look at me as an adolescent, I don't want an adolescent. I want someone who adores me and thinks I'm perfect. Right? So the end of the relationship. Well, then you find someone else that wants to have a child adore them, or you grow, right? You grow yourself and pick an adult or another adolescent who, you criticize them and they criticize you. Adolescents are not very good at taking responsibility because they're critics. Critics are not very good at taking responsibility. They're good at complaining that other people aren't doing it. And so you grow up and you move into the adolescent criticism, which in itself takes tremendous courage. To criticize your parents, to criticize yourself, to criticize your church, to criticize your culture, and to see all of its deeply painful imperfections. And you become more of an adolescent. And as you do, you're going to want to dissociate. I don't want to be part of this church. I don't want to have anything to do with my family. I don't want anything to do with this country. I am out. I hate this government. I hate this country. I hate these people. I don't want to see my ex ever again. These horrible, horrible, horrible people. Where can I go where there's anything decent? And of course, nowhere. Right? There isn't a single fucking place on the whole fucking planet. Believe me, I've done a very good job in my adolescent stage. So I toured the world. Where was my place? The one where it wasn't corrupt and they weren't this and they valued this and they did. Doesn't exist, right? Doesn't exist, right? So, becoming an adolescent leads naturally to dissociation. But finally, right, where movement happens, this is all part of evolution. You have to download the code such as it is. You can't start and reinvent the wheel from scratch every single time, right? That's not efficient. So you download the shitty code that is, criticize it to high heaven, and then when you've done enough of that, write it all down, how every single thing is fucked up. It all is. Write it all down. Get it out of your system. See it clearly. Why is it so fucked up? Why does this idiot do this again and again? Why does my father punish people who are nice to him and respect people who treat him like shit? Why? Why does he have to do that? Think about it. Right? What's the kind of trauma logic? Maybe you have to read a book about trauma and understand, how power dynamics work in psychology, particularly in the reptilian brain, or understand how self-hatred gets internalized. And then you only like people who hate you, right? And so that requires you to grow. And so this is the real pivot, right? Because to become an adult switches from everyone else has to get it together to we have to get it together. And that's hard work, right? Because we're still aware of everything that's wrong, everything that could be better. But of course, that criticism very quickly dissipates if we get into the arena ourselves and make an effort to, whether it's build a better hotel, make a more profitable company, raise a better child, as we hold ourselves accountable to results, right? We're moving towards evolution, revolution, adulthood, iteration, growth, and the continual pattern of life from the beginning of the Big Bang to become bigger, more complex, right? To keep iterating, to become more and more sophisticated. We become a part of that, accepting what is, criticizing what is and what was, and weaving the next pattern, the next fabric in the cycle of time, in the cycle of evolution, in the cycle of iteration. accepting the best of what is and what was, rejecting the worst of what is and what was, and creating something new that never existed before. A child, a company, a book. Creating something new that never existed before, that honors the best of what was, that rejects the worst of what was, and creates a third alternative, a new pattern in the field. That becomes the legacy, that becomes the new pattern to download. For somebody else's child to accept as if it's perfect. For someone else's adolescent to say this is complete and utter shit, which it is. And for someone else's emergent adult to take and leave in a more perfect place, in a better place, in the next generation. So, as is often the case, this was a simple thought. And 2-3 minutes later, it's like, yeah, let's explore that topic, because it's important, because nobody ever explained it to me. And yet we're just in the first band. And it's 45 minutes later. And so what was initially a 5-minute idea is now 45 minutes to develop into just one thread of adulthood. And we each spent decades of our lives learning largely nonsensical facts in school. When was this war fought? What was the name of this? What was this crest of this uniform? What was the name of this? Right? And one of the iterations that I live in my life is taking hours to flush out some of the really important topics that we could all have benefited from if anyone had explained to us what an adult was. For an hour, let alone a week of our education, and the world would be a better place, right? And so it's up to each of us to participate, to choose what we learn, to choose what we teach. And so I will go and bow to what's happening and turn this into a series. So this will be part 1. And I invite you to join me in part 2 of what does it mean to be an adult? What steps can we take to participate in evolution?